I want to begin my short session here with a short story about this boy. Because this is the boy who single-handed flipped my perspective on what does it take to build high performance. 7 years ago, I still thought I was going to be a professional football player. Like many of the boys probably did in this room, I dreamed about becoming a professional football player. Today I have to admit, I'm just injured and forgotten. And as many other injured and forgotten football players, I also ended up as a coach. The best coaches are ex-players with an unreleased ambition. I was one of them. So as a coach, I was building one of the first real football academies in Scandinavia. I had some ideas about how to change what I thought was a pretty conservative world. So we were building this football academy in the western rural Denmark. And when you're the new boy in business, as we were, you're not able to attract what people perceive as being the greatest talents. So basically, we were in a position where we just had to take whatever we could get. I felt it was a bit like standing in the schoolyard. You probably remember that. And in the breaks between the lessons, you play football. And you have to divide all the boys into two teams. Somebody will choose first, somebody will choose second. That was not us, so we were back in the queue and had to take whatever was left when everybody else had chosen. We decide to take this boy in. And we take him in because we can't get anyone better. A few of our scouts have been following him for a while, and they come back and their conclusion is crystal clear. He will never make it. Forget about him. Then one of our safe bets get injured just 2 weeks before the season starts. So we have one place left. And we decide to give it to that guy. He's a bit older at that time. He turned out to be 15 years old. And from day one, all my fears about this boy become true. He's not only performing badly, he has a very bad attitude. I would go as far as saying that he's arrogant and lazy at the same time, which is a quite bad cocktail if you want to be good in anything, I guess. But something happens, and I'll get back to you with what exactly happened. Because 3 years later, when he's 18 years old, he's sold for 4 million British pounds to an Italian club called Palermo. 1 year later, he's sold again for 12 million pounds, 20 years old, to a German club. He is awarded as the best football player of the year in Denmark, as the youngest ever, and 3 weeks ago, he was sold again to a big Italian club called Roma. His name is Simon Kjær, and in this picture, he's playing one of his first national team matches for Denmark against the tan guy to the right. His name is Cristiano Ronaldo. You might know him. This story becomes really interesting because now it's time to meet my boss at that time, the academy director. His name was Klaus. He's here. That's the guy in the golden suit. That's how we dress to celebrate our victories in the Western Denmark. So Klaus, he came into the coach's office one day, and we were 8 of us coaches sitting around the table like you do here. And Klaus, he gave all of us a piece of paper, and he said, guys, please write down the 5 players you think will be the best 5 years ahead of now. So we had 16 players, we had to choose 5, and we'd also have to prioritize them. So number 1 were the one we believe most in, number 5 the one we believe least in. Klaus, he took all the pieces of paper, he put them into an envelope, he sealed the envelope. 5 years later, he opened the envelope again. How many do we think had Simon Kjær on their list? 0. None of us. I mean, listen, we were not amateurs. We were highly educated coaches, all with UEFA A license. Together, we possessed more than 100 years of experience with talent development, and not a single one of us had a clue about that guy. And why do I tell this story today? That's because I know that every single one of you in this room today, you have your own Simon Kjær problem. Because he confronts us with some very interesting questions. What is talent? How do we identify talent? Do we really know what we look for? And what are the real critical success factors for developing high performance? This is Yannis Pitsiladis, who is one of the leading researchers on talent and genes. And his conclusion is that there is no more evidence that we will find a correlation between specific races and high performance genes as we will find between specific races and high intelligence, which means no correlation at all. Doesn't mean that talent doesn't exist. Talent exists, but it exists everywhere. That's the first goldmine concept. The second goldmine concept is about how to identify talent. Because going around the goldmine, I realized quickly that Simon Kjær is not an exception at all. His story is far from unique. Just take Asaf Powell, the world record holder on 100 meter before Usain Bolt. When he was 17 years old, no colleges in Jamaica would take him in because they thought he would never make it. Ronaldo, 3 times awarded as the world's best football player. When Ronaldo was 15 years old, the biggest Brazilian club, Flamengo, refused to pay his bus ticket from the favela and to the training ground. A bus ticket, return ticket, is worth like 50 pence. The same pattern, I think, you will realize with business leaders. With entrepreneurs, there's an interesting study done. They've looked at all the most successful American entrepreneurs. And they're very different, but 35% of them have one thing in common. They're all dyslexic. All of them. That's people we categorize as low performers early on, but seems to possess a high potential. So do we really know what we look for? The question is, how do we spot a superstar who's not yet a superstar? It's easy to spot people when they're already superstars. But before, what should we look for? This guy, he knows a lot about that. His name is Stephen Francis, and he's the head coach of the world's most successful athletic club, MVP Track and Field Club. And as you can see, Stephen Francis doesn't look like a sprinter. He looks like a sumo wrestler, rather. But he's never sprinted himself. He educated himself in statistics in the US. And he has some very interesting ideas about how to identify talent. Because in MVP Track and Field Club, he didn't take the best athletes in. Actually, he refused to pick on the first shelf. He took people from the second, third, and fourth shelf and made them world class. Why? I'll get back to you with that in a moment. I was in the US at a conference, and this is what James Cameron, the instructor behind Avatar and Titanic, said about his most important lesson on creating a high-performance team. He said, failure is an option, but fear is not. I think that's what Carl Dweck would call a growth mindset. So one last example on that, Tiger Woods. When Tiger Woods was number 1 in the world still, at one point there were more points from number 1 to number 2 in the world rank than from number 2 to the last one. What do a champion do if he's in that situation? Will he just keep going, or what will he do? Tiger Woods decided to break down his swing and reinvent it, to build it up from scratch, to reach an even higher level. And as he said, winning is not the only parameter of improving. I think that's interesting when we talk about practicing and keeping the level going. So finally, what happened to Simon Kjær? As I said in the beginning, he was lazy and arrogant at the same time. And at one point I was really irritated with him. So I decided to send him to a psychologist. And then I tell the psychologist what you tell psychologists. Please fix this guy. And I still remember Simon coming back. He had a black briefcase under his arm. And I said that, what is in your briefcase? Then he showed me this. I'm sorry, it's in Danish. I hope you can. That's what he wrote down. He wrote, why was this important? It means everything, he said. What was my goals 2 years, 1 year ahead of now? He would, just as Eriksson's violinist student, stay out after practice when everybody else went to shower and do his self-training. There were other factors involved, but this was the decisive factor, I think. If Carol Dweck had seen this, she would have smiled. Because what is a winner really? What is a winner? A winner is a loser who evaluated himself.